A friend of mine was explaining how neutron stars were formed, then maybe become black holes, etc. He was really into all that stuff. However, as he was talking, all I could think about was how all that star talk had made me think about certain darker stars. So let's talk about them and the impending doom that we're all in for in 10.14 from Xerath's meteoric rise. Yeah, that's too many puns, and I do sincerely apologize. Hey everyone, and welcome to another ProGuides TFT video. Today we're going to be talking about patch 10.14's favorite child, Dark Stars. The comp isn't the only one that is playable, and certainly not going to top 1 every single game, but it's a surefire way to climb, either by playing the build or by exploiting the weakness we're going to go over in this video. The main points we'll go over is the playstyle depending on early, mid, and late game, positioning, items, and general tips and tricks that can make the difference when playing the comp. Make sure to use this comp and have a great climb through patch 10.14. There might be a hotfix, but for any changes, look to the comments for how it will impact the comp. Before we dive in, I just want to let you guys know that we have a Discord community and a new subreddit that is growing really fast. We have you all to thank for that, and we want to continue building our community and helping you to be a part of it, so make sure to check the link in the description below. Early game. In the early game, there is only one unit you really need, and you guessed it, it's Jarvan. However, the reason you want J4 isn't because you want to make him into your late game carry or anything. One item on him should be enough, preferably something that will help your early game be as smooth as possible, like Warmogs or Bramble Vest. The way to have him make the early game an easy ride is by pairing him with another protector like Shin or Rakan, and preferably another Celestial like Ashe, who can give the comp some more damage. Your early game should focus around the protector synergy, but be careful not to drop into the 4 protectors trap by getting an early Nico. While protectors are good defensive units, you will notice a lack of offense, and 4 protectors is not as worth as 4 Dark Star either unit or numbers wise. If you break it down, all your one item J4 gets from 4 protectors is a 10% increase in HP per ultimate, whereas 4 Dark Stars will give you a lot more damage, attack speed from Karma, and stronger overall units like Jhin and Shaco. As for items, we will discuss each carousel thoroughly later in the video, so don't worry. Your comp should look something like this. Or this. Yes, there are 3 protectors in this one, but they should provide a solid front line until you hit more Dark Stars. Nocturne is also pretty decent for the early game since he can isolate and delete a carry. Remember, Dark Stars are actually a playable comp from the start now, instead of the usual Vanguard snipers transition into Dark Stars that used to be the norm in set 3. Mid-game. After Crumbz, hopefully you've completed some core items and your comp is looking strong. If you're losing, it's fine. The items you get now should be able to boost you enough to win some matches due to the inherent power of the Dark Star buff. This becomes even more apparent since at 3-2 you should level most of the time. It only takes 12 gold and it is definitely worth the interest loss since you'll be able to add that 4th Dark Star with 2 protectors and 1 celestial unit to gain that synergy as well. If you haven't hit Shaco, Karma, Mord, and Jarvan, you can continue playing the 2 Dark Star plan and adding other useful synergies like snipers. Make sure to keep Ashe where you find her, as she will be there in the final comp supporting Jhin. She's also a good option for the comp in the mid game after her recent buffs, adding to her utility and damage capabilities. She can stay on the bench if you don't need her, even if she costs you some interest sometimes, as she is extremely pivotal through the celestial and sniper buffs she provides. Think of her as what Ezreal is to Blaster's comps. If you have hit an early Jhin, this is even better. Now is the time to add him to the mix. He can go in without any items as long as you have an Ashe or a Caitlyn to give him more damage with the sniper buff. Shaco is usually a better itemization target than Jhin due to the unit being a bit safer as well as easier to find even in a contested environment. Throughout stage 3, there are a couple of ways to play the comp depending on your win-loss situation. If you're winning, you should play the power level playstyle and aim to go to level 7 by 3-5 or 3-6. It might seem a bit too aggressive, but maintaining HP is really important in order to consistently win with this build, since there's a small power trough until you hit your Xerath or even your Jhin. If you're losing, you play a similar style, but you should sacrifice Econ for a few roles to 2-star a few of your support units, namely the support units like Karma, Mordekaiser, or even Shaco if you haven't been able to yet. That should provide a decent buffer if you're suffering, especially if you have Bloodthirster and Guardian Angel on your Shaco, allowing him to decimate enemies one by one. When at level 7, you have a choice to roll down after Infiltrators, aiming for a 2-star Jhin and Shaco, or even a lucky Xerath with that 1% chance. It's a viable strategy, but a bit risky. It is advised when you are quite low on health and only if you have the items for that Shaco, since he won't be able to stabilize you if you can't survive. Never roll below 30 gold as well, as you will cripple your econ for the rest of the game if you do, and most likely never be able to go level 9, which Dark Stars wants to do. Your other choice, and the preferable one, is to continue playing power level and going to level 8 where the late game begins. At level 7, your comp should look something like this if you found Jarvan and are using him, or something like this if you didn't or have no items for him. As usual in TFT, if you can't find the units of the comp itself, you will have to make do with replacements or not play the comp and try something else. For example, you might use Caitlyn instead of Jhin, holding some items for him. Late game. This is where the fun begins. You should have leveled to 8 at 4-3 or 4-5 at the latest if you're losing. Usually, unless you've been quite lucky with your shops, you should roll down to 30 or 20 gold to find a 2-star Jhin, Fizz, and hopefully a Xerath. This roll down usually determines whether you will be able to go to level 9. While you should always aim for it, sometimes your HP will not allow you to sacrifice the necessary rounds to scrounge enough gold together. Remember, going to level 9 with 0 gold left is not that viable when you have 10 HP remaining and can't roll. The late game is where J4 starts to fall off as everything one-shots him, regardless of how many items he has. His lone items should be able to help him get 1 or maybe even 2 ults off, so his value will remain and his sacrifice will be remembered. This is where positioning is the most important part of the comp, and you live or die by it. Making sure your Xerath is safe, your Karma is buffing him, Shaco is landing somewhere where he won't be stuck on a Bramble Vest, Fizz can ult multiple units, and so on. We will talk about positioning later, so stay on to hear more about that. While still at level 8, you don't always have to go for 6 Dark Stars, especially seeing how contested the comp is at the moment. Going for 4 Dark Stars instead and splashing Mystics, Infiltrators, and Snipers might give you that edge due to the extra useful synergies and carry you to that ability to go to level 9 and complete the comp. Soraka is a pretty strong champion in the current meta, which relies heavily on burst with many comps and on magic damage, so her heal and Mystic class should help mitigate both of those things. The lack of healing reduction items being built is also a factor in her favor. So that's pretty much the playstyle. Let's look into positioning a little bit. Positioning! This comp has multiple carries, so we have to figure out ways to protect them. Starting with Shaco, since his early round burst is not too much, some units have to die until he is useful. Positioning him traditionally on the strongest carry of your opponent is not necessarily the best, unless he has Frozen Heart on him. As for Jhin, you can corner him depending on where Blitzcrank is, and Ashe will protect him from infiltrators from the sides. The Lulu on top will make it impossible for infiltrators to land in front of Jhin and have the 50-50 chance of hitting him. This positioning also helps Ashe target the same thing as Jhin, killing the opposing frontline faster. Finally, Xerath is not that important position-wise. Just keep him in the back row and keep moving him around to throw off infiltrators. Just remember to have Karma always tether him, as he gets the most bang for his buck from her ultimate, be it in survivability or DPS. Jarvan being relatively close to Xerath should also help, since the attack speed buff reaches about 3 hexes, so try to not have them diametrically opposed. This is how the comp should position like in the early game, a simple frontline backline. If you're afraid of infiltrators, you can do a full backline positioning or a sandwich positioning where you stack everything on top of each other so infiltrators cannot do anything but land on your frontliners due to lack of space. In the mid game onwards, the comp should be positioned like this. In the end game, the comp should look like this. Having QS on Xerath means you can corner him as well if you prefer, but the lack of Blitzcranks currently should make him safe by default. Items. The itemization for this comp is really flexible. Dark Stars can make something out of most components. Your priority, weirdly enough, is Belt on the first carousel to try to get any Belt item, with a preference for Warmogs on Jarvan. With it, J4 will give you the early health that you need to survive until you find your units. From then onwards, your main goal is to find Guardian Angel and Bloodthirster for Shaco, be it in carousel or what you pray for at PvE rounds. What do you make out of tiers? Well, Shojin or Blue buff for Karma is quite good, and a really good scaling option for the late game Xerath. Bows are a good one for a Last Whisper on Jhin or an RFC on Shaco, though the latter messes with his targeting a bit, so I wouldn't make it. Rods should always be Deathcap for Xerath, or Winsu's if you can't find a second one. Gloves can be made into Infinity Edge for Shaco or Jhin, Last Whisper, or even Thief's Gloves for Jhin or Fizz. Remember that since this comp plays infiltrators, Frozen Heart is insane on any of them. It's a great third item for Shaco, or it can serve as Fizz's soul item. Getting it from a late game carousel to disrupt your opponent's opponents is a really viable strategy, as all Dark Stars need to burst down their enemies is a bit of time and some dead allies. To recap, your item priority is Belt at first carousel, then Guardian Angel, then Bloodthirster, both for Shaco, then it's a free market for whatever you can get and complete. Tips and tricks. Now let's see some tips and tricks that can help you with transitioning the comp to a top finish. The Jarvan-Rakan duo is amazing and can net you a really early win streak. Make sure you use all your items on units like Xayah, Caitlyn, or Nocturne/Zed, whom you will replace for Darkstar or other units down the line. Teemo is another really strong champion you can use, as he functions well enough on no items and can be used along with Ashe to increase your mid-game strength. Always do the level 8 roll down, even if you're winning. The comp is extremely contested right now, and you will find yourself losing because there are no units left once you get to level 9 by greeting it out. Always scout as much as possible when playing Dark Stars, as you cannot force it blindly for 2 reasons. First, the huge contest factor, so you have to know how far your contestants for the comp are, and second, positioning your carries to make the most out of your opponent's mistakes or general positioning. Putting your Jhin right into a Shen or your Shaco jumping onto a Nico or Wukong with Bramble is not the best idea on earth. Best galaxy for the comp is super dense, as more units equals more Darkstar buffs. Finally, don't force the 4 Darkstar synergy without items on Shaco or Jhin. You will not get enough out of it because they won't survive to tell the tale, especially Shaco. Are you a Darkstars player? Share your experience and knowledge with us in the comments, helping others play this comp. As always, feedback is appreciated, so hit us in the comments. If you like the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see all of you in the next one. Now get out there and farm some LP using Darkstars as your allies.